we lose every
All right, thanks everyone. We are ready to resume.
Title to defend.
With the Schechter School of Long Island.
Rabbis, Mr. Shalom needs a decision as soon as possible.
Good morning. I am Rabbi Benak, and I would like to thank you for approaching our Beit Din. Today, gentlemen, we must come to a decision on Mr. Shalom's case. To refresh your memory, Mr. Shalom was involved in a tragic accident with a self-driving car owned by Miss Rubenstein. After months in the hospital recovering from the accident, Mr. Shalom has decided to come to us in order to determine what he deserves as payment and who must provide such payment. Rabbi Brown, what do you think?
We must first decide specifically how to categorize a self-driving car in accordance with halakha. Do you have any idea how to begin this search, Rabbi Bernstein?
Looking at Bava Kama 1.1, we learned that there are 4 categories of damage: the ox, the pit, the chewer, and the fire.
Well, we can immediately eliminate the pit, or habor, because Bava Kama 9b states that it is stationary and its danger is entirely contingent upon a person walking and falling in this pit. In the case at hand, a car can move, and its danger lies in this action of movement.
That also means we can eliminate the chewer, because although it moves, the problem lies in the difference between the self-driving car and the chewer's ordinary activities. A chewer is expected to cause damage by performing its daily routine. A moving car, on the other hand, isn't expected to crash.
So the chewer and the pit can be eliminated. But what about the fox? The ox. The ox moves and it is not expected to cause damage through its ordinary actions.
The case of the ox is a bit more complicated. It is split into 2 separate categories, the short tom and the short muad.
Well, I don't think it can be a short tom, because we are not concerned that a short tom will cause damage. However, we are always cautious when dealing with a car, because if you are not a careful driver, you will surely cause damage.
That is why you have a driver's license.
But I don't think it can be considered a shor muad either. Bava Kama 3.4 defines a shor muad as an ox that is gored at least 3 times. That means that this aliva system, which has never before caused an accident, cannot be defined as a shor muad.
So I guess that all that leaves is the fire.
That's right. The last category of damage is a fire. In Bava Kama, a fire is described as forewarned, or muad, to destroy objects whether it was intentional or not intentional. This is because it is assumed that once lit, the fire has the potential to spread and cause damage, just like a car.
When starting a fire, it is the owner's legal responsibility to make sure that nothing gets out of hand and nothing gets damaged.
Wait, didn't Eli start the fire by creating such a dangerous code in the first place?
Low. Eli cannot be considered responsible for any damages committed by the aliva car. The reasoning lies in one central teaching of the Torah, pikuach nefesh. We are told by Hashem that we must go to all measures in order to save another's life. Like in Ketuvot 19a, Eli was justified in writing his code in such a way to minimize any potential harm to others.
For this reason, Eli is exempt from paying any damages, for Rabbi explains he who set the fire must pay for any damages done to someone else's property. The person must directly start the fire. Rachel was the one who set all the actions in motion that resulted in the whole chaos by putting the destination into the car that day.
So it's Rachel's fault? What about the jaywalker? He crossed the street illegally and therefore set the fire in motion.
Jaywalking, while technically illegal, is commonplace in a modern city. And all drivers are expected to remain cognizant of any person walking in the middle of the street. In fact, in nearly all cities, a cop won't even give out a ticket for jaywalking. This jaywalker, while not justified, began walking before Miss Rubenstein drove through the jaywalker's path. For this reason, we must conclude that Miss Rubenstein, not the jaywalker, is responsible for the damages.
I recall teaching in Bava Kama 27a that tells the story of the man on a roof who falls off due to an expected wind. Because the wind was expected, it is the person's obligation to foresee the possible danger in climbing on the roof. Similarly, in modern society, it is expected that a pedestrian may jaywalk. So Rachel should have foreseen this potential when buying the Aliva car.
And in Bava Kama 1.1, it states that in the 4 cases of damage, you are accountable for any harm they cause. Rachel owns the self-driving car, and she was unable to properly guard it, thus making it her responsibility.
Since it's Rachel's fault, how much does she have to pay? Is she only responsible for the hospital bills?
Well, Bava Kama 8 states that there are 5 things Rachel can potentially be liable for: boshet, embarrassment; nezek, damages; ripui, medical expenses; shevet, time off from work; and sa'ar, suffering.
Should she pay for all categories?
Let's take a closer look. Was there nezek?
Yes, she crashed into his car.
And we know that he had to stay in the hospital as a result.
Well, the accident surely caused him to miss work, and the crash certainly caused both injuries and pain. So that leaves us with boshet.
In Bava Kama 8.1, Chazal clarified that in order to be liable for boshet, Intention on behalf of the assailant is imperative. Rachel didn't intentionally cause Mr. Shalom's pain, therefore, she does not need to pay for bullshit.
Do we also need to consider her insurance company? I'm assuming that she has a plan that would cover the costs.
An old friend of mine, Rabbi Moshe Sternbuck, in his Tshuvot V'Hanhagot, accounts for the insurance company. In his Tshuvah, we learn that either Rachel can pay for the Ford damages, or her insurance company can.
Now that we have all that settled, what should we do with the Leva Industries? Their code is clearly is far from perfect.
Good point. We should take advantage of this opportunity to improve the Aliva system.
I recall a story in Bava Kama 60b of a king that was allowed to have his soldiers trample through another's field, thus destroying the property. A major teaching in this text is that in most cases, we are not allowed to save our lives by destroying someone else's property.
Interesting story, Rabbi Benek, but I don't think it's so applicable to our case today. The king was concerned with having his soldiers intentionally cause damage to the fields. But in our case, the car's code works to prevent serious accidents as much as possible. So any resulting damage is completely unintentional.
Just as the king was able to have his soldiers destroy the field in order to save lives, Af Eli, the head of Aliva, can have his code cause damage to preserve the mitzvah of Pikuach Nefesh. Because its main function is to save a life, not only does Eli not have to change his code, but it would be completely immoral for us to force him to do so.
So Eli does not have to change the code at all?
Well, he could definitely still improve the code to avoid any further lawsuit against him. It is essential that he include some type of warning on all products that directly states that their self-driving technology does not guarantee 100% safety.
That makes sense. It is not Eli's obligation to include a warning because the buyer is forewarned of any potential danger with the car. As it says, Adam muad la'olam. But this warning would serve as a siyag, or offense, around the halachic concept of muad.
I would also suggest that Eli add a human override option. According to Rabbeinu Asher, it is always the rider's responsibility to control the animal that he is riding. Similarly, the driver of a car is responsible to control his or her vehicle in order to avoid a possible collision. This additional precaution would account for the reality that the code will never be perfect. And it would give the driver an opportunity to act according to their driving history instead of relying on just the code.
I know I wouldn't be too eager to get into a car that I couldn't control at all.
These changes seem pretty reasonable. We should get in touch with Eli as soon as possible.
Rabbi Bernstein, what is the verdict?
The car must be compared to a fire, therefore. It's Rachel's fault because she started the fire that caused the events to occur. She must pay for 4 of the 5 payments of damage, Nezek, Ripui, Shevet, and Tsar. Eli must add a human override option and a warning label that states that their self-driving technology does not guarantee 100% safety.
Thank you all so much for your help.
Formulate my questions.
Okay.
Another question first, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge you a little bit on Rachel's responsibility in the sense that you're saying that jaywalking is commonplace. Drivers need to be cognizant. But we also know, based on the information that we have about this case, that regardless of her cognizance, the accident still would have occurred. In fact, it would have occurred, there would have been more damage to human life, had she been cognizant and able to stop it. So I want you to walk me through that a little bit more, because there's a bit of a dichotomy in that argument.
I think that in this specific case, the problem really lied in the fact that she was not watching the road the entire time. She was listening to her podcast and not paying attention. So I think that if she had, by buying this car, right, by driving, getting into a car in general, you are, whether it's self-driving or not, you should always be careful. You should be always watching the road because there is always this potential of damage. Therefore, we know that she could not have stopped in this case because she was not watching the road and therefore would not have been able to react in time. However, if she had been careful the entire time, if she had been watching, and if there was this human override option in the beginning, we don't know, maybe she wouldn't have taken that route, maybe she would have seen that there was a faster way to go, maybe she wanted to drop by a friend or something like that, that they really, that she should have expected something like this to happen when she bought the car, and therefore should have remained cautious entirely from the moment she walked into the car and put in her destination.
We've pretty much come to terms that jaywalking is bound to happen. We're from New York, and so we jaywalk pretty frequently. We go to the city all the time, and police officers don't give tickets for it as often, so it's bound to happen in commonplace.
I'm gonna push back a little more, is because
well, there's jaywalking and there's jaywalking. And furthermore, is that it was stipulated in like the further information that was given to you guys that that the safest towards life action that actually happened was the one that actually taken by the Aliva car of plowing into Mr. Rubenstein's car to hurt him but not kill him, to save the life both potentially of Rachel's and of the jaywalkers. So I don't see how your logic could flow of how, if she was more cognizant, that she could have done more. Like, it's a reasonable bet what her control was. And if it's predicated that you have these, I know like self-driving cars aren't legal currently, I think it was mentioned in New York, but at the same time, it's predicated in this case that they are legal, so if she had the parallel, she had a driver kind of doing it, would she still be liable? So if she had a driver who was driving it, would she be liable?
Well, I don't think that if she were driving the car, it would have avoided such an incident. But I think what our case is getting at is that by buying this self-driving car and by basically waiving her right to either change her given situation or react to her surroundings, she assumes a certain amount of negligence in that action. Statistically, it may be a more safe option. I think we heard that 64% of the time self-driving cars would avoid a crash. But I think we still need to acknowledge that by originally buying the car and regardless of the situation, waiving her right to change and react to situations around her, she does assume some amount of negligence there. So I think our point is not that she could have changed the situation, but that she assumed this negligence and therefore she's liable.
And the human override option isn't maybe not even for this case, but there's always a sense that you always want to be able to control your actions, and not having that control is something that even in the source of Rabbeinu Asher, you have to be in control of your vehicle in the case of an ox, and there was no way of her having control over this car.
So I'll ask you the same question I asked another team, which is there a human action that is higher, ethically higher than pikuach nefesh? If we have to take all of these as facts, and we know that the car will always act to save a life, is there anything else a human being can do that would be even greater than that?
Well, we also have to look at the code as something that is created by a person. It is not 100% safe. There's always going to be a human error aspect to it, and that's why we added the human override system when they feel that the code isn't doing exactly what it is expected to do. There's still that whole concept of it's a human creating this code, and it's not.
So would you place liability then in that situation, if, let's say, the car didn't act in pikuach nefesh, would you guys, as a Beit Din, would you put the burden of responsibility then on the car company?
I'm not sure I understand.
Like, let's say that you're saying, like, there's always a component of human error in the programming. Let's say that there was, I'm going to give you a different idea, like if the car didn't act in pikuach nefesh. And
How did the car act?
Like it made a mistake. It ended up killing the jaywalker instead of damaging the car. Would you guys approve?
In your case, the code failed and the car just barreled right into
Precisely.
it.
So would that put the liability then on the car manufacturer?
I think that's why we want to put in place a human override option, I guess. I think the idea for us that you're putting 100% trust in effectively a robot, I think
Scary.
it's a bit scary. I personally wouldn't want to get into a car that I had no control of. And I think that's, I'd like to double down on that point, that I think, though in the majority of cases, a self-driving car might be a safer option, there's still, on face value, there's still an assumed negligence in buying a self-driving car.
Try for instance. Can you just walk me a bit more in terms of your casting away of the ox as a as damage? Just one more time.
So basically what we say is that an ox, in essence, right, it starts off as a short tom when it's from birth. And so when an ox is born or whatever, when you buy one, and it's considered a short tom, you don't expect it to cause damage. And so you're not so careful. You can let it graze, you can let it walk around and stuff like that, and you don't constantly need to keep your eyes on it or keep it fenced in all the time. However, when you buy a car, if you get in the car and you are not driving carefully, there's pretty much a 100% fact that you will get into an accident. If you're not driving carefully, it's just bound to happen. However, when you have an ox, you can let it graze, stuff like that, and it's not assumed until it's gored more than 3 times that it will gore in the future.
So, just, I know you have like 10
Yeah.
seconds left, but, so explain to me why, so in one kind of sentence, why the car is not like the short, I understand why it's not like the short moad, but why is it not considered like the short tom?
In the case of a short tom, you have no reason, if the ox has never gored before, there's no reason to believe that the ox would gore. I think a more comparable analogy would be, maybe a lion. Even though lions never killed someone, there's always this expectation that a lion, a dangerous animal, would have the ability to cause damage. In this case, I think I see that as being a car. Though the car has never killed anyone, the car has this, immediate potential to cause such damage.
Okay. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Scott, thank you very much.
Okay.
Next up is Frank Bush Academy.
Thank you.
Thank you.